The April 10th, 2023 meeting of the WVU Faculty Senate will come to order. The minutes from the March 6th meeting were distributed as a link to your agenda. Are there any corrections, additions to the March minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are approved as written. President Gee is traveling today, so he's not going to be joining us. And we're going to lead off today's meeting with a discussion about the university budget and some of the program restructuring that we've been hearing about. I think, Rob, you're going to start out with a little bit of a presentation, get us going.
Okay, so after President Gee's State of the University and the campus conversation that we had, we worked with our Faculty Senate leadership to see what questions they were hearing and what we could answer for the Faculty Senate. So we'll open this up for questions from those in the room and online here in just a few minutes, but our colleagues in Faculty Senate leadership were kind enough to synthesize some of the questions. And I'll try to tackle several of those right now to get our conversation going. So the first question, in a State of the University address, President Gee stated that WVU is facing a structural budget deficit of $35 million in fiscal year 24. So the first question to be addressed is, what is a structural deficit and how is it different from what we have weathered in the past with short-term budget shortfalls? So I thought the best way to do that would be to compare and contrast what I would consider to be a one-time incident versus a longer-term structural problem with a mythical hypothetical university that is much smaller and rounder numbers going forward. So bear with me for just a couple of minutes, but I'll compare and contrast. I think it does highlight the situation that we are in. So let's assume in 2023, the first year of this hypothetical university, tuition, we collected $700,000. We had about $400,000 in payroll. You can see supplies, loan for a building, utilities and insurance. Expenses total $670,000. We collected $700,000 in tuition. We made $30,000 and we put it in savings. Year two, our tuition went up a little bit and our expenses went up a little bit, but we still had a profit of about $30,000. And so we put that in savings as well. The $30,000 went to $61,000. The year three, the same thing. We're on a pretty good trajectory. Our tuition dollars are exceeding our expenses each year, and we've grown our savings by $30,000 and change each year. However, 2026, so we have a really popular J term, but there was a horrible blizzard of 6 feet of snow and we had to cancel our J term. And so we lost, as you can see, about $55,000 of our expected tuition revenue. And we had to put a new roof on our building, $30,000 in one-time expenses. So you can see this year, instead of a $30,000 profit, our university lost about $57,000 because we were unable to have our popular J term and because of the roof. Both of those are extraordinary one-time items and not reflective of our basic cost structure. So we bounce back the next year for 2027. We're able to have our popular J term, our tuition pops back and we don't have to buy another roof. Thankfully, everything's fine there. And so our basic revenues and our basic expenses pop back into place and we made about $30,000 that year and we grow our reserves. All right, so this is just a repeat of 2027, but in 2028, a couple things happen. So a couple of factories in town close. There's a new pesky online higher education provider that's entered the market. And so we've lost some tuition dollars and we're not collecting 721, we've declined to 713. And because of competition from the other university, we had to pay a little bit bigger pay raise than we normally do. And inflation was really hot. And so we had to pay a lot more in supplies. So instead of making $28,000 in that year, we lost $9,000. No big deal. First year, we use our savings and we move on. But the impact when you go to 2029 is we're continuing to lose market share. There are fewer students because the factories have closed and market competition has driven our revenues down. But we haven't done anything to change our costs from an expense perspective. We give a little bit more in compensation. Our supplies cost a little bit more. And you can see, in 2028, we had a big insurance premium increase for healthcare and cybersecurity benefits, cybersecurity insurance, which went up dramatically. And so you can see that instead of making $30,000 a year, we went to losing $9,000 to losing $44,000, and this trend continues for 2 more years. And you can see our tuition dollars, because we have fewer students, has declined, but our expenses, because we have the same amount of people, and our supplies are costing more and we give pay raises, is significantly outstripping our revenues. So unlike the J term getting canceled in the roof, which are one-time items, we are now at a structural place where our revenues that we would expect to get, given our market and our programming, do not make up and cannot pay for all of the expenses that we have as an institution year over year. So the structure of the revenue that we could reasonably anticipate getting falls short of the expenses that we have at the institution in terms of our people and our supplies. So when we use the term structural deficit, we're not talking about a one-time extraordinary item that harms for a year, but the outlook in the future years, we are out of balance in a way that we are not breaking even. Okay, so comparing that to our university in the campus conversation the other day, you can see that when you look at our total revenues, and given the demographic cliff, and we'll talk about that here in just a second, you can see our net tuition and fees, even with some tuition increases, actually decreases over the next 4 or 5 years. And I'll point out that in 2024, we're projecting $407 million in tuition collected, but by 2026, because of some smaller COVID classes and the fact that we have not bounced back the way we thought we would, we're actually declining. So we're taking in less revenue as an institution moving forward. Appropriations, we keep flat, minimal growth, 2.5% growth in grant activity. And then you can see salaries and benefits, pay raise every couple of years, regular inflation with supplies and utilities. And then you can see our net position, and just there's some software amortization that does some goofy things the next couple of years. But you get to our adjusted net position of a negative 30 million and change in 2024, and about the same in cash deployment. Where when we get to FY 2028, you see that figure at the bottom of the chart, the bottom 2 lines that I go across, a negative 71 from our net position, and we would deploy $62.8 million in cash. That is what we mean by a structural deficit. The revenues we're anticipated to get from the students and the market share that we have are not keeping up with the expense structure and the expenses that we have from a people and a supplies perspective at the institution. That's the long-term structural piece that we are working through. And that's why when we talked about it at our last campus conversation, and we'll talk about some declining, unfortunately, trends that we've seen since then, that if we do a $35 million margin improvement in 2024, and we have to grow that margin improvement to by 2028 to 75 million, keep us in a positive position if the demographic cliff hits us and the COVID cliff, which is already here given those classes, is already upon us going forward. And so that's the basic of the structural issue that we have to get around as an institution. So the next question we received from our colleagues was, well, how did we get here? What factors contributed to the sizable budget deficit in what seems to be a relatively short period of time? Very fair and good question. And then we've heard the term demographic cliff mentioned when discussing the budget. What is the demographic cliff? How will it impact WVU, and when will the effects be felt? So the demographic cliff, just an indication where someone has looked at how many kids are in 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade right now, and they've projected. And the fact is there are a lower level of 5th graders right now than there are 9th graders right now. So when those 5th graders graduate high school in 10 years, the demographics of the kids who will be going to college in 7 or 8 years is less right now. It's a sheer numbers game. Less 13 years ago as opposed to 20 years ago. 13 years ago, we were having less babies. And so when the demographic cliff is simply a realization that, not because of the choices, but just the sheer number, 200 graduate today, it's 180 in 5 years. The demographic cliff is the fact that there will be fewer kids graduating high school in the next 5 to 7 years, really starting in 2025 and continuing for 3 or 4 years from that particular point in time. So that's one impact of the cliff. The second, and if you haven't seen the campus conversation, you're really tired, or you're really tired, but you can't fall asleep, I encourage you to watch my part of it anyway. But I do go into some detail about all of the things that are sort of going against us right now from a higher ed perspective. The impacts of the pandemic were profound. In some ways, they hastened what we're going through, and given the amount of federal money, they probably masked some things moving forward. And it's not just us, it's all across higher education across the country. We had a lot of federal aid, as I mentioned. We reduced expenses during the pandemic, but those costs during that period of time, but those expense reductions are just not sustainable. Inflation, everybody feels that, it's wreaking havoc. And then as we exited the pandemic, while we haven't been able to do everything, there was some pent-up demand. So it costs more and to do what we do, and we've got less kids coming here, which has led to the pinch. Just to circle back to the enrollment picture and what we're talking about. So in 2014, from a head count and excluding high school students, essentially, we had around 31,000 head count as a system. We think that by 2024, that number will be down to 26,000, so about a 5,000 reduction in head count. And given what's happened from a COVID perspective and the demographic cliff, if we don't increase our market share, gain more transfers, do something to change the trajectory based on the smaller number of students coming into college, that number could shrink to 21,000 by 2033. And so this red line here has caused part of our budget challenges. We thought after COVID, we might snap back a little bit, but we haven't. And then you get to here is really sort of an impact on smaller COVID courses. And then we start the demographic cliff over the next period of time. And so the headwind for higher education is we've been declining. We declined during COVID, and there's fewer kids for our market. I'll also tell you, while we have been increasing tuition, we have also been increasing the level of our institutional scholarshiping or discounting that we do as an institution. 2014, the amount of discounting we did was around 50 million. This year it was over 120 million. So while we might increase tuition by 3%, if we increase the level we scholarship by 6%, the net effect of that tuition increase may only be 1.2 or 1.3%. This is great for our students and is a terrific story that we need to tell for WVU, but from a financial perspective, it eats into the margins of what we can do. The other thing that's a great story and mentioned in the campus convo is 2014, our four-year graduation rate was 33%. It's 48% today. Huge increase. A terrific testament to everything we've done as an institution. It also means that instead of taking 5 years and an extra 2 semesters of tuition that people are paying, they're only paying 4 years worth of tuition. So from a financial perspective, as we have become more efficient and our students have graduated earlier, then from a revenue bottom line perspective, it matters moving forward. What we have to do, we have to talk about our value. We have to talk about the fact that 1 out of every 2 kids that comes through WVU graduates in 4 years. Why you ought to come here over the next several years. While other colleges are facing this similar landscape, we're pushing through on it moving forward so that we don't hit these moving forward. So I know this chart's going to be a little confusing, so I want to just preface this by saying the question that I was asked is, how could we get to a 35 or a 40 or a 45 million challenge in the matter of a couple of years? The first, we're dealing with a $1.3 billion budget. And so these are some examples of the cost pressures that we have seen over the past couple of years. This isn't everything. This isn't all of the positive and negative adjustments. This is just some of the bigger impacts to sort of some that we've been talking about. We thought we were going to hold our enrollment flat this year. We were down 900 students. We think we're going to be down another 1,000 students next year. Take what we get on average from those students, and it's $24 million less in revenue for FY24 than when we started for FY23. Our debt service is increasing. We're paying off more of our principal. We actually issued some debt to work through COVID, about $40 million, so that added on to it a little bit. Something that we knew and that we knew we would have to prepare for, but at the margins, moving forward, for the capital projects that we've done, there is some additional pressure for the next 5 to 7 years. Our utilities have increased significantly over the past couple of years, $4 million. We pay about $600 million in salaries. I will tell you that we don't assume that every position is filled for all 12 months. There's a certain churn and vacancy factor. When you make hires in this inflationary environment, on $600 million, if you're off by 1%, that's $6 million of additional salary expense. Same thing on salary or supplies, an additional $4 million, just a couple of percentage points difference. And then finally, I know we've talked about PEIA and a lot of the employee premium increases. So the employees pay 20%. The employer pays 80%. And so just as the employees premium increased by 24, 25%, our costs are also increasing by 24%. The amount that WVU will cut a check for PEIA from 24 compared to 23 is actually around $12 million. But the hospital, because of some of the dual employment, some of the physicians, they actually pay all of that for those physicians that are clinical faculty, but also have a faculty appointment. So our net increase is around $10 million for PEIA. You add all those up, that's $54 million. Again, we'll do a tuition increase, not a big one, but a tuition increase this year. That'll make that 55 go down some. But folks are asking, well, what are the big boulders that would make that much of an increase? The EIA increase, a little bit of a drop in enrollment, and you can get to relatively big numbers relatively quickly. All right. Has the budget deficit changed since President Gee's address, and is it possible that other factors beyond our control may cause the 24 deficit to grow further? Yes. The number is around 45 million now. And honestly, and I'll just on this one, I thought that when the governors, or excuse me, when the state was considering a PEIA increase, and they do 25% all in premium increases versus a 10 or 12% premium increase with changing some out of cost, I never dreamed they'd pick the 24% scenario. I was thinking that the employee share was going to be a lot less than the $10 million. So that's on me. So if anybody asks, why did the 35 million grow to 45 million? I made an incorrect assumption based on everything I heard from the legislature and folks in Charleston that it'll be 12 to 14% instead of 25%. When they went to 25, it added several $1 million to that figure to move forward. We hope and believe, and allocation letters are going out in the next couple of days, that that figure is just about our target for next year. So why do we need to develop a longer term strategic solution? And it's because we have that structural deficit. A couple other questions, and then we'll turn it over for some discussion. So the other questions we received, well, what actions has the administration taken to date to save costs? What other strategies beyond restructuring academic programs are being considered or implementing to reduce costs going forward? And then the prevailing sense among faculty is the longer-term financial restructuring will primarily be accomplished through reduction, sunsetting of academic programmings, and elimination of faculty positions, or reductions in other types of positions, including staff positions and mid and high-level administrative positions, also being considered. Answer the third one first. Yes, everything is on the table, and we're working through not only with respect to academic programs, but with respect to administrative programs and how we can solve things moving forward. And that will mean not only with respect to the academic side, but with the administrative side of the house, less people and less things that we are doing moving forward. Make a couple more comments about that after I walk through a little bit of data. So administrative costs and efficiency efforts. So you can also blame the managed print on me. As we were thinking about, to the extent people are unhappy about managed print, I'll take full blame for that one as well. But we were, over the past few weeks, we've been looking at a pretty sizable deficit. And I asked my team, what's some example of some low-hanging fruit that we could do, try to take away some cost pressure? And they said, well, we have this managed print contract where we have copiers that are on this managed print. Color copies are about 40% cheaper. Black and white copies are about 15% cheaper. We can strategically do this, and we spent about $250,000 on networked printers outside of our managed print contract. While someone may have to walk down the hallway or set up to use a copier or a printer on a floor, and they won't have a printer on their desk, we think we can knock off $150,000, $180,000 or more as we leverage our managed print contract. And I said, go do it. And energy efficiency. We do not, because we use our buildings quite a bit, but we have not been very stringent in looking at, and we make it a little bit warmer at night after 6 or 7 o'clock in our buildings and keep them that way till 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. There's probably $400,000 or $500,000 worth of savings for there. I will tell you that the HSC and the general IT units are going to be merged into one. So there are a number of things, and I know that it's going to be a little bit more inconvenient. But as we look to try to save costs, every bit that we can work through helps us navigate it. And so if you look at where we've been over the past decade, there are a number of things that we have tried to do to reduce costs without impacting quality. Sometimes successful, sometimes not as successful as we would like to be. But there are a number of examples. The Freedom Agenda and what we did from an HR flexibility perspective for classified and non-classified staff was significant in our HR partner model. I think it's been a success. We have made some budget cuts more heavily to the administrative units, protect the core of the institution, the academic side. We've gotten to the point where it's got to be more of a balance in how we move forward. Shared services was a cost savings. Outsourcing dining was a cost savings. We did the voluntary separation incentive program where we reduced headcount by about 100. That was a a savings. And you can see through the line, we have tried to do a number of things to try to mitigate our cost savings perspective. So in terms of people, when you look at the number of non-faculty positions we had in 2013, and you compare that number to today, if 500, and don't count me exact, but I'm within 10 or 15, we have 519 less FTEs from a non-faculty position today as of June 30th of 2022. I don't have complete 2023 data than we did in 2013. We have reduced our non-faculty staffing here at the institution by over 13% over the past decade. We will continue to look at where we can be efficient. As we bring more technology online, we will, when people retire or move people on from the institution, do that. We will have more non-renewals. We will work through that on the administrative side. I will tell you, and Marianne, I may butcher this, but as it relates to a full-time 1.0 faculty FTE, we exclude the clinical folks from the HSC, we are down about 3.5% over the past decade. There have been some decline in faculty, depending on whether you're talking about tenure track or tenure or service or teaching, but administratively, we're down about 13.5%. I will say that there is it's like from academic programming perspective, there is a minimum number of folks we have to run the PRT or to keep our buildings clean, or from a shared services perspective, as we have declined in some of our numbers. I know some of the faculty have felt the impact of I have to do more as a part of my job. That's been a sacrifice we've had to make as we have reduced our headcount over that period of time. Don't get me wrong, we are committed, and the administrative units need to do more. We're going to have to do more, but we have done some and have a head start in terms of the reduction in numbers that we need to do moving forward. So I think this is the last question before we'll open it up. How are we addressing the 24 budget deficit, and how are those actions different from the restructuring that will come? We're going to do $21 million in cuts. Those allocation letters will be coming out over the next couple of days. $9 million of that will be on the administrative side, the other on faculty, HSC, and academic side. And we'll be deploying $24 million in one-time resources from the WVU Foundation. While colleges do have some flexibility as it relates to foundation funds, I will note the administrative units do not. And so you will likely see more activity as it relates to personnel on the administrative side, at least initially moving forward. And we are prepared to do some hard things. So ran through several questions. Scott, happy, and Marianne, you want to jump up and join us? We're happy to take further questions either in person or online.
Well, I'm going to ask one question, and then we'll get the questions in the room. Just a reminder, when you step up to the microphone to ask your question, state your name and college or school for the record. So I know, Rob and Marianne, that there's pressure from our Board of Governors relatively quickly. And some of this work is necessarily going to have to happen over the summer. So how do you plan to engage with the faculty over that period? And what is the timeline you think to start providing some specifics to the process getting started?
I'll start it from the academic side. So we are, when I say we, I'm saying my leadership team, we are currently, and the dean, because we're engaging them as well. We are developing our approach to this challenge. And I would like to say that I have all the answers right now. I do not, but I do know that we began a process of academic transformation 2 years ago, about 2.5 years ago now. And that was really the beginning of doing work that we thought would position the university to be sustainable in the future. I would say the challenges that we anticipated, financial challenges, are no longer theoretical, but they're here now. So the process that we have to undergo is going to have to be a more aggressive approach to academic transformation. What that exactly looks like, I can't tell you right now, but I really do hope that within the next few weeks, we'll be able to share what our approach is going to be in a timeline. What I would say is we're going to have to look at everything. So we will have to look at our academic program portfolio and make sure, look at the success of academic programs and bring more data to the process. So initially, when we engaged in that process, we looked primarily at enrollment data, but now we're also going to be needing to add additional data such as cost to deliver a program. Some programs are more costly. That doesn't necessarily mean we won't be doing them anymore, but it just means we have to know what the costs are and the benefits and add that to the equation. So we will need to engage in a portfolio review process. We need to look at instructional efficiencies and go deeper than we have. So that means looking at things like reliance on adjuncts and part-time instructors, faculty workloads, class sizes, the things that we started to do and we did, but we're going to likely have to go deeper and be more prescriptive. And then the last thing would be looking at, and not the last thing, I would say another big area would be looking at structural changes that we might need to make in terms of combining institutions, combining colleges or departments or programs, and looking at any kind of academic restructuring that we could do that would not only generate cost savings, but would actually make sense from a content perspective, and that would preserve the core of what we do. So these are a number of things we have to look at. There's probably more, but we want to do this expeditiously because there's pressure, right? So one thing you'll see is that you can see that we are going to have a budget deficit this year, and that's going to have to be managed largely by the colleges. But that is being ameliorated by that bringing over money from the foundation, which we will not be able to do next year. So we really do have to act expeditiously, but we also want to do it thoughtfully and carefully, and we don't want to appear to be arbitrary or capricious in how we do it. So all of that has to be done. We're working on that now. We will be working on that likely into the summer because we are still gathering some of that data. For example, the financial data is not easy to gather. We will likely work with a consultant to help us make sure we're doing the right things, make sure we're following best practices, to verify and validate the work that we're doing. But I anticipate, again, we're going to need to do some of this work in the summer, which is not ideal from a faculty perspective, but we will work with the deans, the college leadership, we will work with the department chairs who are here, and we will work with faculty senate leadership and at least making sure that our process seems appropriate, that we are taking into account the right things, again, that we're not being arbitrary or capricious. And then what I will tell you is that we will be transparent in what we do. We will share the data. We don't know yet in what form we'll share it, but we will share it and we will show you the data that's driving the decisions. And there will be time to respond to that. I'm really guessing that some of that work will be done over the summer, and then we'll be moving into the early fall and sharing the results of that data gathering process. I will say that because I will stop talking in a minute, but because the colleges are faced with the budget cut they are right now, there may be some of that happens at the college level earlier because there is data available. It's not all the data, but there's data to show to some degree what's working and what's not. But the deans are going to have to, and the colleges are going to have to work with their people, all of you, to make the changes that are necessary for this year, because we don't really have those cash reserves to draw from. So the point is, some of this may happen sooner rather than later. I know there's a desire for certainty. I completely understand that. I also understand the anxiety and the fear that this has created. And I'm really sorry about that because I'm trying to imagine how it feels, and I think it's probably pretty scary. But just know that we're going to move on this expeditiously, but also thoughtfully, and we will share information as soon as we have it.
Anything to add, Rob?
Yeah, I'll make a couple of additional points. So, in fiscal year '24, given the ability to deploy some unspent endowment spend from the foundation is giving us a transition year, but it's not something that's permanent. And so as you think about the various steps we need to move forward, the colleges and the administrative units over the next 3 to 4 weeks will be finalizing that $21 million cut. And so what those cuts will mean and how we work through those will be known in the course of the next 4 to 6 weeks, I would say, moving forward. It'll take a little bit of time for the units to work through that. And certainly those will know and be finalized with our June board meeting. I do think it's fair to say, given the enrollment that we've seen and we're predicting for the fall, that we're going to be moving from that 21 million in cut to the 45 million in cut over the next, pick the time period of 12 to 18 months as we move forward. But as you know, those decisions have to be made sooner rather than later so that we can work through things appropriately as an institution. The final point I would make is I have, and I think everybody in this room has, no intention that we're going to lose the amount of students that we're going to lose over the next decade. I hope we do everything we can to increase market share. What our board has told us to do is we need to look at how we reimagine the institution so that by 2028, if the worst case happens, which we hope that's the worst case, we're prepared for it, but we've taken steps at every angle of the institution that we are a sought-after place that grows enrollment instead of declines enrollment going forward. This is a stress test. It's something that's real. The 45 million is upon us. And really, I don't know whether it will or won't happen, but that 45 will either decline or grow based on what we do from an enrollment perspective. And so we're going to be doing multiple levels of work here. What do we do to get through 24? What do we do to need to be prepared for 25, which we know those cost a lot more? And then how do we position the university to not hit that worst case scenario in 2028? And so I want to reiterate what Mary indicated and apologize that we don't have a specific timeline and a date for when we'll announce all of those decisions. I think there's a couple of different ways to do this. We could lock ourselves in a room for the next 4 weeks and come out and say, we're going to let you know everything next Tuesday. And in that case, we're not here at a campus conversation. We're not talking about any of these things. We sort of get in and we roll out. The other thing is, once we found out we had a problem, we said we need to have, as part of Gordon's State of the University, President Gee's State of the University, a different conversation. We're going to roll out a campus conversation, and we're going to start providing more information as we feel it's matured and we can get it. And it's going to be messy, and we're not going to have all the answers. And neither is perfect. Neither is a perfect solution. We'll get you the timelines and information as soon as we can possibly do. I don't like this not knowing as much as anybody, and we'll try to get that clarity to you as quickly as we can for a number of reasons.
I have one question in the room. If you're online and have a question, if you're on the participant side, you can raise your hand or put the questions in the Q&A or chat, and we'll get to your questions online.
I'm Jonah Katz, Eberly College. I have a question about the university's bond ratings. So if you look at the latest public advisory from Fitch, it's from November, and it gives a very positive outlook for the financial situation here. And then they give a list of negative developments that could adversely impact the rating of those bonds. And it reads like a checklist of everything that's happened since November. So there's the sudden unexpected drop in revenues. There's the fact that the state government just drastically cut their own tax revenues, presumably going to have some effect on our appropriations. There's sudden increases in cost. It's like a list of everything that's happened. What is your assessment of the likelihood of our debt being downgraded by one of the ratings companies, and what would be the consequences if that happened?
Well, I'm not going to predict the future as it relates to our bond houses, but let me try to provide a little bit of context. We are AA minus with Fitch, we're AA3 with Moody's, and we're actually an A with Standard & Poor's. We just went through, coming out today? Or, okay, unofficially, don't anybody tell anyone. So every year, the rating agencies come through and they sort of kick our tires and see what's going on. And S&P has been doing that right now. And so you think, oh, this is a great idea to announce that we've got a structural budget deficit to our campus while we're going through a rating agency analysis from S&P. And you sort of sit there and think, this has trouble. Talk about leading with your chin. You know, we had some very honest conversations with Standard & Poor's. We did. And we sent them the campus conversation. We sent them a number of materials. And they were in committee on Friday. And unofficially, again, you can't say this, I'm not supposed to say it, but unless something funny happens, they're going to maintain our bond rating with a stable outlook. And one of the things that they told us is that if things deteriorate the way it could with the cliff, you're subject either to a negative outlook or to a downgrade. When you look at the metrics that Standard & Poor use in particular, they downgraded us 4 or 5 years ago to an A from a AA minus. And one of the things that they looked at was our cash position. There are several things with our peers, particularly in the A rating, we do favorably well. We have 71, 72 days cash on hand. Most of our peers in that A range are in the 85 to 90 range. And so there's some things that are strong about our balance sheets. There's some that are weak. And so for now, we have maintained, I think, in part because of our transparency and our indicating that we're going to solve some of these challenges. And we'll go through the same analysis with Moody's and Fitch. I was pleased that we maintained at least a stable outlook. I think the fact that we're a flagship, you know, if you're a private regional institution, it's a grimmer picture right now at the moment. And so we have our challenges, but they're not as bad as some of those. So, you know, we'll have honest conversations, and the rating agencies are pretty intelligent. And as you indicated, they sort of gave a checklist that proved to be true. So they see the trends that are moving. If we were to get a bond downgrade, let's say Fitch would go from AA minus to an A plus or even an A. As to our current debt, I don't think it would have any impact. But if we were to go to issue debt in the future, it would mean a higher interest rate. What that means specifically is that 6 basis points, is it 20 basis points? It's hard to predict, other than to say that when people lend us money, because we have a lower bond rating, they'll expect a higher rate of return because there's more risk. And that would be the biggest impact. And, you know, other than the modernization project, or unless something comes up that we have to, I don't see us issuing a lot of debt over the next decade. We just don't have the capacity. We need to take care of other things.
Oh, I'll do one quick question online here and then we'll come back to the room. So this one came in earlier. It says simply, aren't students supposed to graduate in 4 years? That was certainly my parents' expectation.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is really actually the direction we want to be headed, right? It's an unintended consequence that you know, that we lose that tuition, but that's absolutely what we want to do. And the reality is, if we continue to increase our retention, right, we will actually benefit financially as well. So it's a combination of either stagnant or declining retention with higher graduation rates where you have that financial impact. So yeah, no, we're certainly not saying that. We want that. We want to see more of that, even 3-year graduation rates, but we do need to increase our freshman retention and then our persistence. We really do. And we're putting a lot of effort into that. And COVID kind of hit us hard, but we believe that that may be an area where we can see some gains.
And I do think, you know, our funding formula now rewards us for increased graduation rates. I think there'll be more pressure from the state on looking at improving what we do right now.
Kim Kelly, School of Pharmacy. I'm the chair of the Faculty Welfare Committee, and I've already been in contact with you about PEIA. And I appreciate your offer for greater transparency and learning more about the process. I was a little curious about the 519 number from 2013 to 2023. and how that number was generated, how many administrative positions we're talking about. I'm also interested in how much those salaries have increased over that time, and if we can get an estimate of that. But I will follow up with an email, get more information.
Yeah, so I'll tell you that we looked at the number of classified, non-classified, and those that were FIAPs at the time that were really not faculty equivalent. We added that total in 2013. We got that total from 2022. There are 519 less in 2022 than there were in 2013. As for a breakdown as to where each of those folks came from, I don't have that. Just looking at, here's the number of FTEs from a decade ago, and here's the number of FTEs now.
All right, Assad Deveri has a question online. Assad?
Yeah, thanks. Asad Dawani from Berkeley campus. As you Provost mentioned regarding the effect on academic and probably reduction in force, I was wondering, is it affect all the campuses or is only for main campus?
These are challenges that impact all of our campuses, and we're looking at solving this challenge as a system going forward. And so this will be initiatives that will need to be undertaken in Kaiser, Morgantown, and Beckley.
Thank you.
Emily?
So Emily Murphy from the College of Applied Human Sciences. I think I heard that you've already talked to the deans about coming up with a plan for a $21 million cut. And correct me if I'm wrong, but is that across the board that each college has a certain percent that they need to cut? Or can you kind of give more details about how that cut's going to be across campuses?
Right, so I'm going to try, I may have to call on someone from my team, but my understanding of the way we've looked at it is we're trying to institute some of the practices that we will be instituting with the new budget model, which is we want to look a little bit at performance, how colleges are doing in terms of their enrollment, for example, and their revenue, and research as well. And then, so differentiating that cut somewhat based on that, but also recognizing that there is, everybody's going to have to share some of this pain because this is happening now. Some colleges don't have either the foundation reserves or the cash to be able to manage this. So we're trying to take both an individual but a 1WV approach. So reducing, but we are going to be able, we believe, to reduce that cut overall by utilizing those foundation funds as a whole.
On the administrative side, there will be some units that will be exempt from the cut. Enrollment management comes to mind as someone that we don't want to reduce their expenses as we try to get more students. And others, I think there's a portion of a cut. And so we are asking each of the administrative units generally to do with less moving forward, but it's not in that sense and across the board. There are a number of exceptions on the administrative side where we're not asking folks to reduce spend, or we think it would be against our best interest to do so.
Hello, Leslie Cottrell, School of Medicine. Quick question. One is HLC, our review is happening right now. And so the question was, you've mentioned a few things that we could do to help. I know in the review, they're going to be looking at all of this, bonds rating, plus any other effects that this might have on our work. What can we do to help while they're visiting, right? It's virtual, right?
They're coming, what, in April? Is that right?
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So we've got a little time for that. But I would say that, in general, we want to put our best foot forward. It does not hurt us. It does not help us to share or air, right, our concerns, our anxieties with an accreditor. But I will say that we're not alone in this, right? You all have read the headlines. A lot of universities are dealing with this right now. So my guess is that HLC will be familiar with this. this kind of situation and will understand it. If not, that will may not affect their review. But I would just say we've got to try as a campus to put our best foot forward.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The thing I would sort of add is I think there's going to be more schools, not less, that are talking about this over the next several months. There are some who can write their own ticket, but most are looking at, and I mentioned it in the campus conversation, folks like Penn State and others that are looking at the same scorecard. And I think that what we have to do is not ideal. There's no joy in what we're talking about. And I'll ask for the same thing that I have to tell myself. I range from healthy skepticism down to cynicism sometimes when things aren't going right. And believe me, when we started going through February and early March, and every Friday we'd have a budget meeting and something else would, well, PEIA is going to do this, or gee, we've got this problem, or we've got that. And so we decided just to stop meeting because it was just too painful to,
You're joking.
I am, of course, joking. Absolutely. I think everybody here is committed. We all care deeply about this institution. We will have disagreements on how we move forward on everything. I think what I would appreciate from everybody, and when I step out of line, someone to correct me, is let's try to stay on that healthy skepticism as opposed to the cynicism line as we move forward. HLC, seeing that we're an institution that's grappling with real issues, I think is a show of health moving forward. Just sort of, as President Gee reminds us, to stay up the mood elevator when we're moving forward, because that's, we'll have reasonable disagreements. And I think there's a lot of opportunity, I'll say for me, for fair criticism on the job that I do. I'm not perfect, but I think we're all trying to row towards a picture where we've got some enrollment challenges and we have to address it as an institution. HLC knows that.
And it sounds like we have much more time to, if you needed more documentation that we're still meeting our goals, slightly different documentation than we normally do, that you have a chance to listen. So
They're also looking back, don't forget.
Right,
I mean,
right.
part of accreditation is they look at the past 10 years, right?
Right,
And
process.
so that doesn't mean that the mood on campus or what's happening now might affect their view, but they are looking at the past.
And then the last was just a plug for research in terms of the next steps that you do. I'm sure research is in there, all three missions. Wanted to put in there that some of that money goes back if not spent. And so I know that some of these stop gaps are there for a purpose. And I didn't know if we get, just to make sure that we get steps on conducting research and it goes back or stays, if it do something differently because of that. If that makes
We
sense.
will definitely work with the research office. I mean, we are not going to give money back. That I can tell you.
And research is a core part of our institution. I mean, when we were talking with Fred the other day, and he said, the reason the federal government provides what it does for research across higher education is for the value of the research itself, but the opportunities that it provides to our undergraduates and graduate students in terms of the workforce of tomorrow that drives communities across the country. And so, like anything else at the institution, we need to take a hard look at what research is being impactful, but and how we invest to make sure that we're helping meet our students' needs. And so when we talk about being student-centered first, graduation rates, retention, and persistence, but it's also a lot of the value that the research brings as an enterprise. And from a value proposition to the university itself, research is, I think from all of our perspectives, a big part of that going forward.
Question online, will athletic programs be impacted?
So athletics is not why we're here, but it's a big part of the institution. Had several conversations with Ren about the appropriate management of their budget going forward. And what I would say is, just like we're doing and looking at what are the investments that are going to move us forward, they'll need to do the same things in being appropriate stewards for how we manage going forward. So the answer is, yeah, I mean, athletics is going to have to be an appropriate steward, just like we are as an institution. I will also note, though, that not a though, maybe it is. Someone was talking to Jim Clements the other day, and before the run that the Clemson Tigers made They were getting about 16,000 applications a year. It's about 60,000 now. And while some of that is due to academic progress, it's also due to success on program. And so whether it's women's soccer or women's basketball or men's basketball or football, when I first got here, we talked about the Greer effect. I had no idea what they were talking about. It was the fact that Will Greer was in the Heisman race moving forward. Kansas State did an analysis that their Elite Eight run was $65 million worth of free media that they raised. And so, you know, and given my previous interim athletic director stint, I'm vested in making sure we have a successful athletics program. But one of the reasons why we want to push them is the more success they have on the field, the more it's going to help with the brand of the institution going forward. And so we will ask them to do, but we're also asking them to be successful on the field.
Hey, Dan Totske, Eberly College of Arts and Sciences. Thanks for doing this for us today. I'm glad the internet's working right now. That's great. So my question has to do with what we can, like so far we're talking about obviously students first, reducing how much we're spending. A lot of us, if not most of us, been doing that for a while. But especially for myself as being tenure, talking with my non-tenure track colleagues, we just want to know, like, what can we actually do, specific concrete things we can do, not only, I mean, frankly, because right now it's sort of kind of waiting to see if my head's on the chopping block, it kind of feels like, and see what the cuts are going to be. So what can we do, other than wait?
Right, and I totally appreciate that, wanting to do something. I think the main thing right now is to just continue to focus on teaching, on doing your research, and really pay attention to retention issues and helping every struggling student, figuring out how you can help them. Again, if we can increase our retention rate, it also increases our bottom line. It's of course better for the students as well. And then whenever you're asked to or volunteer yourself, how can you help with recruitment efforts? Because I know colleges have done that. I know, for example, Chambers just did that. They had a letter writing campaign for prospective students where all the faculty signed individual notes. So, I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot, but it is helpful if you are a faculty and staff, but faculty are engaged in both the retention and the recruitment piece. And then really look at what is happening in your unit. I mean, are you losing enrollment? Have you lost it? What has been done to change that trend? Have you looked at your curriculum? Is something that you are doing just out of line with what students want? I mean, that's a longer term process. But to me, those are the things that are within your ability. And then I would just say, be aware of the environment, be aware of the financial environment that we're in, be aware of the financial environment of higher education. And I'm not saying that people aren't, I'm just saying that it's not just something we're facing, it's something that higher ed is facing. Higher education is in a bit of an existential moment, honestly. And so what does that mean? And what are the solutions for that? I mean, any ideas that you have, we're welcome to receive them. You can send them to us, you can share them, and Rob may have some additional.
Well, so I'm a big Ted Lasso fan. And so he coins a lot of great phrases. I use them too often, but he said there's two buttons in life he never likes to hit, the panic and the snooze button. So my first thing would say it is, and literally, I'm not panicking. I don't think it's a time to panic. Also not time to hit the snooze here at WVU. And I think that's sort of, we're somewhere in between for where we want to go and how we want to move the institution moving forward. And we do have some hard things to do, but I'll just provide just a little bit of context. So I mentioned the 519 individuals or so non-class, classified staff moving forward. There were some rifts in there, but there was also the VSIPs. There was also a lot of attrition and retirements. And so as we talk about a $75 million figure, I know that's a big figure. But when a dean and chairs and others at the institution are looking at that stress test over the next 5 years, they'll be looking at a number of things. How many retirements we have, how many people are eligible for retirement, and do we think is there a succession plan for this faculty member and the research that they have to turn it over to the tenure track or the tenured folks that are moving through at the institution from a research perspective. And so as we're trying to sort of get ahead of what's happened with COVID in that 5-year outlook, do this in a thoughtful process moving forward. And, that number is big, the 75 million. We're still going to spend 1.1, $1.5 billion. And some of the things we're doing now is so that for the faculty and the staff, most of whom, the overwhelming majority of whom are going to be here, that we can make investments. So as you think about your future at WVU, it turns from the hard things we have to do over the next couple of years, to hopefully a base for growth from that point going forward. And so I would say to Marianne's point, be a part of that, be engaged as we can move forward as an institution going forward, and know that as we are trying to do this and get to sort of the new base, we're trying to do it to get to a place of investment and growth so that we are excited for our faculty and for our students into the future.
Thanks. One follow-up to that. And also, like most of us, I think I just like to hear the sound of my own voice. But with what we can do, I'm just thinking, especially in terms of supporting students. I mean, we all know too from our own experiences that one of the big retention issues, that our students are in crisis and have been in crisis in general, but especially when we're talking about mental health. And so, especially in terms of just previously, Senator Manchin announced funding for mental health services. I wonder, is there, as we're cutting back everything, where is the consideration? Is there consideration of increasing mental health support, concrete mental health support in terms of funding the Caruth Center, having resources for faculty, instructors, and so on for students? Because while we're cutting everything back and needing more students, we won't be able to graduate our students because they're leaving because they are in crisis.
Yeah, I'll get back to you with more specifics, but just know for the past year and a half, we've been working with our health system on a number of initiatives to provide additional mental health services to our students. And in this area that we don't think is going to alleviate itself in the near future. So I'll get back to you more and more specifics on that particular piece, but it has been an area that a lot of folks at the institution have been working on.
I also want to say we're looking at what supports there are that we might need to increase for faculty. So this is, I know, a very stressful time for faculty and for staff. And so thinking about what resources we have that we can deploy to support our faculty and staff who are dealing with this, I would say this uncertainty, and recognizing that you all are affected too.
Emily Murphy, College of Applied Human Sciences again. So we're talking about engaging students, and a lot of what we're focusing on is inside the classroom. So my question is, what are we doing to really promote students staying here outside of the classroom? So they're in, our classes, maybe a total of 16 to 20 hours a week. I know there's things like Project 168 and some other projects that are going on, but from what we're hearing from our students, they feel less engaged outside the classroom as well. So how are we going to shift things in that realm? In addition, when we're looking at tuition, room and board is also a big money maker at a university. And I know that we are typically a university that freshmen stay on campus and then they leave campus after that. Are we looking at ways to increase keeping students on campus and keeping them more engaged while on campus in dormitories or those private partner whatever they're called?
Emily, I can address it on the academic side. I might suggest that we bring Corey Ferris, the Dean of Students, to a faculty senate meeting and talk about the various ways that the university is engaging with students outside the classroom, but maybe he would be willing to listen to some additional ideas. I'd say on the academic side, I know that we're looking at perhaps revising the Jeff and thinking about how do we build in some experiential learning opportunities into Jeff. If we can promise every student that they will have a hands-on experiential learning opportunity before they graduate, where they can apply the skills that they learn in the classroom, but also give them job skills that will help them when they graduate. I think that's something we could do on the academic side.
I'm not even gonna try to do justice on student life and others. That's a question for them. I will say, from the housing perspective, we did do a procurement to look at really refreshing our freshman stock to make sure that it's sought after. Going into COVID, we thought that would be a refresh of towers. But honestly, given where costs are and what we would have to charge our students, we've all decided that that's not what would be in our best interest. What we're focusing on right now is, Borman's really popular, but it's popular not because of its luxurious amenities. It's popular because it's right behind the mountain lair. And so we're thinking about what should be on that space in the next 4 to 5 years. And as we think about that, it's not so much maybe sophomore and junior, but we want kids when they come here to say, wow, I had a great place to live as part of that overall experience. And from my perspective, location is great, but Borman needs a refresh. We are looking at some of those things. It will be the public-private partner route to the question about debt. It'll be an equity deal where someone comes in and they have higher risk, higher reward, as we try to talk to make sure the environment, particularly kids away from home for the first time for any length of period of time, have a great stay.
Hi, Megan Light. I'm from the College of Creative Arts. I just wondered if we could go back to, unfortunately, thinking about other schools that might end up failing as part of these next few years, which will be a sadness. But I know that in the School of Art Design, we've already been recruiting from basically other campuses across Pennsylvania. So do any of the current budget models and kind of crises account for any of this, or do they not, because it's way too tentative and it's a little early?
Yeah, so it's actually a really good question. And the way I finished up the campus conference, we'll stand up for a second. So what we did is we literally took the number of students that we expect for this fall based on recruiting and all of those trends. And then we said, okay, if we get 20% of the market share in our core demographics now, we're going to get 20% of that market for the next 10 years. The pie's getting smaller, but we're just getting 20% slice of the pie. Again, that's a stress test given the declining demographics. If you look at the past 4 or 5 years, maybe it's a longer period of time than that, we've actually gained market share. So if we're getting 20% of the market share now, we were only getting 16% of the pie 5 years ago. We've gained market share, and we're actually making inroads. If you look at where we've lost enrollment, it's actually been in West Virginia. We've lost a little bit in our non-resident market. We're down like 1.5% non-resident the past 3 or 4 years. We're 5% down year over year in West Virginia. And so and then I'll get back to the point, like Preston County, we ought to have a lot of kids from Preston County going to school. The average high school, 45% of high school students in West Virginia go to some sort of education after high school. It's only 32% in Preston County. That's an area where we need to be active in recruiting to increase that particular number. But we did not take into account WVU increasing market share over that next 10 years. So let's say we go from 20% to 25%, that's $75 million. If we can consistently say that we're going to get 25% of the market, that $75 million figure would come down and be less. And I do think that, I believe that 5 years from now, we will have a better opportunity to get some of those students who are going to some of those schools that are in stress. Try to put that as positive as I possibly can. I mean, I don't wish ill against them, but I've got 2 of my favorite colors are blue and gold. And I want this institution to be successful. I think we ought to be as aggressive as we possibly reasonably can to get as many kids to come through these doors as we can. We could hold 35,000 students here with our current infrastructure. So let's go max it out and then give pay raises to everybody when we do it. And so I'm all about recruiting for the students that ought to be here.
Okay, I have one follow-up question, but it's related to a different thing. So I know that our freshmen are not required to live in the dorms on campus.
No, they are.
They are.
They're not, because I know an incoming freshman and she is totally staying
What?
off campus. So I just wondered how strict we
So-
are. Yeah, there are exceptions and they're getting by with them. So I just want to put that in your ear.
Well,
of like,
I'm the mean guy on
I
that
want to
one.
be PG. I wasn't either,
So
okay?
here's the answer on that one. It used to be a 50-mile radius. If you lived within 50 miles, you didn't have to live on campus. During COVID, We didn't enforce that as we previously had. And I think some students we got a little bit lax with that. And, some folks would take advantage of it. We have started for next fall enforcing that. And so I think over time, it would be our goal to work through that. I also think we moved to more of a county model than a 50-mile radius. So the answer is yes, it has been an issue and it is something that we're working on.
Right, thanks.
Scott, go ahead.
Hi, it's Scott Critchlow, Eberly. So I have two questions that are actually both tied to things that Dan brought up beforehand. One is that, as you all acknowledge, this is a very, very stressful time period for certain people. And I greatly appreciate the detail that y'all are providing, but I think in a way it's made things maybe a little bit more confusing in terms of the timelines that we're dealing with. So in terms of like the major effects near term, should our expectation be that those be occurring during the 2003-2004 fiscal year? And so like we would have like really big decisions take place then, which then maybe tied to like layoffs, so I guess in May 25, I guess, maybe possibly. Or is it more that y'all are looking at it as like this is a 5-year experience? And so we should be keeping in mind that, okay, cuts will happen in year 1 or 2, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't also be happening in years 4 and 5. I mean, because I think it is really important to the conversation about how faculty themselves manage their lives, really.
You want me to go? Okay. So really fair question. And we haven't been entirely clear because we're still working through it. So let me give it one more shot on how we would move forward. I'll just take them in steps. The 24 cut of the $21 million, I think it is fair to say that there will be some non-faculty positions where folks either retire or leave the university that we will not fill the positions. There will be some non-renewals of the non-classified staff who's all of our contracts in June 30th. And then there'll be some analysis of the reduction in force for classified staff. And I think you'll see that over the next several weeks as we prepare to meet the 2023-24 fiscal year 24 milestone as we move forward. The course schedule, not that it's set in stone, but it's already been out. I taught this spring at the law school. I'm teaching in the fall. I already know my time, and I know that there's an expectation and those things are set. And so there are certain expenses just from talking about that are difficult to do for the fall. But there are some levers we're trying to work through as it relates to how the colleges would work through fiscal year 24 that we'll have to work through, realizing it will be really hard to get to 45 million next year given what's already set in stone. And so let's do the funds and the expenses moving forward. So that piece will happen over the next several weeks. And faculty will teach in the fall. And I think, Marianne, this is accurate. What'll then come as we tackle 24 and we start to turn towards FY 25, as we work through the summer, we'll start to identify some of the structural things, and Marianne mentioned sort of merger and some of those things that we've moved forward. But then as we get towards the fall and the analysis is done, late summer, let's say, we'll start to have some conversations about fiscal year 25, which would start July 1 of 24. And then you're starting to look at the calendar for that next year and the programming that move forward. So as I mentioned, we can't sort of hit the snooze and say, well, we've got 5 years to tackle this. But we also know that next Tuesday, we're not going to announce that all of a sudden we're eliminating, 1,000 positions at the institution moving forward. It's how do we work through 24? That July 1 of 24 for fiscal year 25 is going to be critical as we move things forward. And then over that period of time, as we talk about if a program sunsets or something like that, that may be some costs that we ultimately see get fully baked in FY25 and FY26. And then, as I said, the longer term planning of, well, gee, if the demographic really hits us to 28, what's that 5-year planning look like? And so I wish I could tell you in 2 weeks, we'll know everything for 24, and in 6 weeks, we'll know everything for 25. But we're looking at it in terms of what I would sort of call a Band-Aid bridge year for 24. And then I think in fairness to faculty, Marianne, jump in, if there is a program, and I think there will be some that as we get through the summer and start into fall, that we're going to say, we're not able to do this anymore. We're talking about hopefully, may disagree, but more of a thoughtful approach of teach out. And then the faculty member has some time to say, well, I need to do something different, but I've got time to plan for it. So it's not next week that I'm in my office packing up my boxes and moving forward. I know that takes longer and it's a little bit more stress level, but I also think for the benefit of our students and for our faculty, we need a little bit of time to go through a thoughtful process as to how that will play out. So there are stages towards how we work through this in consideration of our faculty and our students.
Yeah, I would absolutely support what you said, Rob. And Scott, I think what we want to do is look at some short-term changes that we can make that will have an impact that maybe we could consider doing sooner rather than later, right? So things like reducing our reliance on adjuncts, part-time instructors, potentially increasing or enforcing workloads, increasing class sizes, those kinds of things. And then looking at those programmatic changes. I mean, ideally we make some strategic decisions that position us as such that we don't have to do this every year, because we don't want to do this every year, and it ends up everybody bleeds the same. So the goal would be to make some strategic decisions. They may not impact next year or even the year after, some of them, but certainly position us over the next several years to be sustainable.
Okay, I greatly appreciate the clarification. That's helpful to know. Following up on something I think was maybe kind of implied also by what Dan was raising. My impression is that different colleges and different campuses vary a great deal in terms of how much institutional data is available to faculty and staff in those colleges and campuses. And I guess I don't even know where I think y'all would look for this. But is there data that would be generally available to faculty who would be concerned tied to say like enrollment trends or say the cost of labs or kind of balances that the colleges pay for grants? Like, is there any data that faculty themselves can like look for to find to kind of see if they should be worried?
I think what we want to do, Scott, is we know the enrollment data right now is available. How we share that, is there a way to share that with faculty in those units so that it's not public facing, but internal? If there's a dashboard, I think we're working on all of those things. Ideally, if you're in a department, you should know what your data is, right? You should be able to know what's my enrollment look like 5 years ago? What is it now? What does the research expenditures look like? What are they now? I mean, that data, some of that data is available. It's a matter of how we share it. Some of it's not yet available. So I think we really are going to have to think about a way to share that data or be able to provide access to faculty that is not public facing, but at least is public facing within the institution.
I'll just say, and Lou has put into the chat that APS program level data is available to any faculty member. So you can email Lou Slime.
And Lisa Castellino, our chief budget officer, said, I quote, "We are on it."
I appreciate it.
Just from a macro level, and this won't get into your specific question on sort of a program, Scott, but we are. I have not been a fan since I took this position in 2017 or whenever it was of our current budget model. I think that it lacks in a lot of, not that we're not transparent about what we have, but to your point of costs and what should be fairly attributable to a college or a program, I think and this is decades, this isn't anybody's fault, the way things have been developed, it's been a disservice to the ability to have some of these crucial and transparent conversations going forward. And I'm hopeful that in the coming weeks, months, and years as we work through this, you're going to see a different level of data and a different level of transparency when we talk about what goes into our budget. And I think we'll all benefit from that.
Scott, I was just going to add really quick that you can't see the financial data for your department. We don't have that yet, as Provost mentioned. But if you want to look at your enrollment data, you just have to go into your faculty portal and click on the APS button and then pull up your department and it'll all be there.
Hey, Dan Totske again, Everly College. So as we're talking about this, kind of going back to a previous discussion regarding student enrollment, especially 'cause it seems like that's a really a big area of where some of the deficit comes from. And we talked about student retention, but with sort of increased recruitment, to me, from what I've heard over time, but even frankly over the last few years, it seems like we're sort of, all right, it seems like West Virginia students aren't either wanting to go to college or graduating high school, and so we'll look to other markets. But it seems like here at home, that could be a easy, well, not easy, but a direct focus of ensuring our grade school students are not only finishing high school, but then being ready for college and interested in college. So I'm wondering, what are our plans for investing in West Virginia to ensure that we have West Virginia students who are continuing on, who are finishing high school, interested in college, and ready to go? It seems like, just my perception is, we're sort of looking external more than internal.
I'll share with you what I know. Be great if we could have someone from enrollment management here. And I would, again, maybe these are guests that you could have that could come to Senate in the future. What I'd say is the issue of high school attainment in West Virginia is pretty serious. We have one of the lowest, if not like second lowest, high school attainment rate in the country. It has declined precipitously. We are working with our folks at HEPC to talk about how can we help as a university participate in a statewide effort to help students understand the value of post high school education. And it may not necessarily be a 4-year degree program. It might be a 2-year degree program or even trade school. But it's something that was supposed to go before the legislature. There was a council that was going to be appointed, and they didn't get through the legislative session. Long story short, it's really important, and we are working with the HEPC to identify what we need to do what we need to do statewide and how we can participate on it, in that effort. But I do know our enrollment management folks are thinking about that. I don't know if you have any additional thoughts, Rob?
Well, so that's a big long-term sort of goal that I think is the state's land grant that we ought to have with extension and everything that we do, that we think about how we increase outcomes in K through 8 and high school, how we get more kids into community college and more kids to transfer from community college to WVU, how we increase our overall educational attainment. I think it ought to be one of our core priorities. I mean, when you look at, and I'll channel my inner Clay Marsh, the social determinants of health. There's a lot of things from West Virginia that this institution does now. And I think broadly speaking, continuing to focus on the things that are going to move the needle to help our state. In some sense, it's part of our mission, but in another sense, it actually helps our own bottom line. The more kids that we can help to attain their future, the better off we're going to be.
Any other questions? Any online, Frankie? We really appreciate Rob and Mary Ann for offering to do that Q&A. I think it was really productive. So thank you very much.
We'll come back anytime.
All right, so I have just a couple of quick announcements, and then we'll kind of move quickly as we can through the rest of the agenda. So we are starting the work of populating our Senate committees, still looking for volunteers. If you haven't completed the volunteer survey and are willing to, are interested in serving on a committee, please reach out to Corey Hunt or Leslie Cottrell, chair of our Committee on Committees. We are still also looking for candidates to run for the 7 elected seats on the Faculty Senate Executive Committee. So if you're interested in serving on Executive Committee, please let us know. Just a reminder, Executive Committee can have no more than 1 member from any one constituency. So you don't want to have 4 or 5 nominees from your college or school. That'll dilute your vote. So that concludes my report. Are there any questions? All right, so we'll move on to the curriculum committee report from Lori Ogden. Lori.
Thanks, Scott. So I have several for approval items. The first is the new courses report in Annex 1, the course changes report in Annex 2, several programs. So we have a new program, Earth and Environmental Science, and also Sustainability Studies, and then several associated AOEs, Climate and Environment Science, Environmental Studies, Geoscience and Sustainable Energy, GIS Methods and Sustainable Development. We have a program change, a minor in Art History, a new program, Environmental Engineering, a new program, this is a minor, Health Policy and Healthcare Navigation, another new program, the LPN to BSN, and a new minor in Public Health, and a new program in Wood Science and Technology. And then last, there's a for information course deactivation.
Are there any questions for Lori regarding the new courses, the course changes, or the new programs? Okay, so we'll bundle those items into one votable item. All those in favor of approving Annex 1, Annex 2, the program changes and new programs, please raise your hand. Let Corey get a quick count. Any opposed? Okay, no opposed, so that those changes are approved. No problem. Next item on the agenda is report from the General Education Foundation Committee, Lisa DeBartolomeo. Lisa.
I don't actually have a report, but I didn't want you all to think that we're just sitting around eating bonbons on the Jeffco. We are working diligently on coming up with essential elements that we would like to ensure are included as they go forward, and some definitions. We're surveying other institutions. So we're not just sitting around twiddling our thumbs. I should have a nice report for you next time, but I imagine you're glad not to have one to extend things today.
Thank you, Lisa. Next, we'll hear from the Teaching and Assessment Committee Chair, Diana Davis. Diana.
Hi, we have an for information item only. This is for instructors in Maymester and especially the summer 1 session. The Blue system, which houses our student evaluation of instruction tools, both the new one and the pilot one and the current one, is going to be updated and sporadically unavailable Saturday and Sunday, May 6th and 7th. It'll have much better compatibility with mobile devices to help improve student compliance or completion of surveys. It'll also have it'll look and feel much more intuitive. But this will affect those people requesting SEIs for Maymester and for summer. We will be communicating with you, giving you information about how to update that, what to expect in the update, and try to make that flow as seamlessly as we can.
Thank you, Diana. Any questions? All right, next is the Committee on Committees. There is an online question. Mary Moore. All right, Mary Moore has a question online. Mary? Mary, are you there?
Hi, I'm here. I don't have a question. I'm sorry. I must have accidentally, I accidentally raised my hand. I
No
apologize.
problem. Okay, so next we'll hear from Committee on Committees Chair Leslie Cottrell.
And we have no report.
Thanks, Leslie. Eloise.
And I have no report either.
And our Board of Governors Representative Stan Howman is online. He also has no report. Okay, so just for information item, we finished compiling the results from the recent new senators election. Those are a summary of those results are attached as Annex 5 to the agenda. And we do plan to post more detailed results on the Faculty Senate webpage. Next item is a resolution to create a special committee on student recruiting and retention. We've heard over the last few weeks in discussing the budget that recruiting and retention is everyone's mission. And there was a suggestion among the leadership to create a special committee that would work with the provost's office with enrollment management and potentially the university relations on how faculty can help with student recruitment and retention success. So is there that resolution is posted as Annex 6, I believe. The 5, Annex 6. So is there a motion to approve that special committee? Thanks, Eloise. Is there a second? All in favor, please raise your hand. Twenty-four online. All right, anyone opposed to creating that special committee? Okay, so we will create that committee. It's a special committee, which means it will have to be reauthorized annually. And the Committee on Committees will work at populating that. Next item on the agenda are campaign statements from our chair-elect candidates. Our candidates are Diana Davis, Suzanne Gosden Kitchen, Lauren Pinzo, and Tom Zinni. So we'll start with Diana. You can come up here, wish.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to address all of you today. I did clock this. It's about 3.5 minutes, so I'm working to get us out of here. My name is Diana Davis, and I'm an associate professor of occupational therapy in the School of Medicine. I've been a faculty member here at WVU, soon to be 24 years. I joined the new division of occupational therapy in 1997 after 10 years of clinical practice that started in Michigan, went to Los Angeles, spent some time in Kentucky, and then finally West Virginia. I have broad experiences here at WVU as a student. Both my master's and PhD were completed here. As a parent, my daughter is a graduate of the forensics program, and as a faculty member, where I've had many roles. My many experiences have provided me an understanding of the institution and the wonderful faculty, staff, and administrators choose to work here, research here, study here, and provide service. My leadership roles at WVU have included chair of departmental promotion and tenure committees, chair of the Faculty Senate Committee, program director, and vice chairperson. This broad participation in the university has led to my understanding of both the student life and academic services. Over the last 23 years, I've experienced both the successes of the university and the challenges that we have weathered. I have been inspired by the strength of mission and purpose of this institution. My leadership style is born a little bit of a natural inclination. I was the bossy oldest sister, and through years of experience and training, I have held leadership positions throughout my professional career, including as a senior therapist and team leader. I've also served in multiple leadership roles within the professional organization of occupational therapy, including state association president, representative for West Virginia to the National Association, and group leader of national ad hoc committees. I have participated in formal leadership development through my education and through training offered by my professional association. My leadership style is pragmatic servant style. My foundational skills I find most effective are listening, building consensus, and decisiveness. A body of governance such as the Faculty Senate requires these skills to succeed. Representing the faculty, we should be included in decisions that affect the institution, the students, and us. In the rapidly changing environment we live and work in, fast action is necessary. This requires leaders who are aware of historical perspective, current issues, and most importantly, the future challenges and opportunities. WVU is in a time of change which can foster feelings of uncertainty. The next 2 years will require faculty senate leadership to represent the faculty as a body interested in participation, able to envision a future, and able to move and participate in change. I know this is something that I can do. In my first year in the chair-elect role, I look forward to looking collaboratively with the chairperson to successfully achieve their goals while I listen to learn more about the university and its faculty, both in Morgantown, Kaiser, and Beckley. I will build relationships that will support the Faculty Senate in its role in governance of WVU. It is hard to predict what I will need to achieve in the second year in the role of chair. I doubt many had usher faculty through a pandemic in their plans. However, currently, I see a need to examine Faculty Senate processes to modernize and increase the ability of the body to participate meaningfully in governance and to find opportunities to effectively increase communication between the Faculty Senate and the faculty that we represent. Thank you for your time today. I honor the opportunity to serve you in the chairperson role, and I would appreciate your vote.
Thank you, Diana. Dan.
I'm a Southerner. I can talk fast. I'm also old, so I had to put my glasses on. Hi, everyone. My name is Suzanne Gosden Kitchen, and I am a candidate running for Faculty Senate Chair. It would be my great honor to secure your vote, and to do so, I'd like to explain why I should be your candidate of choice for this election. Currently, I'm a teaching professor in the John Chambers College of Business and Economics in the Department of Management, recently promoted, yay. I'm actually the first teaching professor in my college to be fully promoted. I'm really proud of that accomplishment. I believe I'm qualified to serve as Faculty Senate Chair, not only due to the longevity of teaching and administrative roles within my college, but also due to the service record in Faculty Senate here. During my time in Chambers College, I've been elected senator 4 times now. No vote buying either, so I've served on many committees, including JEFCO, which I guess has more work now to do than ever before. The Curriculum Committee, TACO, and a few other special committees that Lou Slimak convinces me to participate in with his interesting ideas. Additionally, I've been a core member of the Commission on Faculty Enfranchisements, also known as COFFEE, an advocacy group for non-tenure track faculty. Some of you may not even know that that committee exists. I'd be happy to talk to you tenure track and non-tenure track people about that at some future time. Good stuff coming out of that commission for sure, and I'm very happy to take that conversation forward at some other time and place. It's through this service to the university community that I came to better know and trust and respect my fellow senators, committee members, and peers, all of whom are deeply engaged with the mission of this university. By working together, I've actually learned from each of you. I've learned about the programs in your colleges, your career obstacles, your successes, and your efforts at creating, managing, and even surviving change. I've learned how faculty and administrative support helps you achieve your goals, and quite frankly, I've learned of your achievements even when that support was lacking. And so it's for all these reasons that I've accepted the nomination for Faculty Senate Chair, and my name will appear on the election ballot today. I'd like to put forth my Faculty Senate Chair platform, assuming we're actually allowed to have a platform. And here's the things that I'm interested in: faculty welfare and shared governance. These two focus areas seem to intersect in meaningful ways, to me at least, that affect our role as faculty members. Giving attention specifically to a couple of these areas will allow us to improve communication. I really believe that. Address equity issues, fine-tune accountability processes, and develop co-ownership for the outcomes that affect our careers, our academic offerings, and our students. It'll be work, and it's the type of work that I'd like to do with you. So thank you for your time and attention today. I look forward to serving with you as Faculty Senate Chair should I win the election.
Thank you, Suzanne. Lauren?
All right, hello, everyone. I'll keep this to 30 minutes. Just kidding. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today as Faculty Senate as a nominee for the chair-elect position. I've served as a faculty member with WVU for the past 9 years, and I'm currently an assistant professor and extension specialist in community and economic development with WVU Extension. So this position is tenure track with research and teaching as significant areas of contribution. Prior to this role, I served for 5 years in a county-based faculty role as the Families and Health Agent with WVU Extension in Marion County. And prior to that, for 6 years as the Executive Director of the Family Resource Network. My time with WVU has provided me with an opportunity to work with many faculty from colleges across campus that partner with the communities we serve. I enjoy learning about the work of others and working to understand different perspectives of my colleagues. My position within WVU Extension has helped me develop a great appreciation for the reciprocal relationship that WVU has with the residents of our state as we work together to develop thriving communities. I have a master's degree in public administration and am pursuing a PhD in human and community development. And through both my career and education, I've gained extensive experience facilitating campus committees, board meetings, community coalitions, and other collaborative work, both in an academic and community setting. My faculty role focuses on community engagement, and I am passionate about developing inclusive policies and practices that bring diverse experiences and perspectives to the table. These skills are transferable to the position of chair-elect, and if elected, I will use my administrative and organizational skills to ensure that Faculty Senate continues to serve as a meaningful forum for faculty voice. We are facing challenging times as an institution and as faculty members. To navigate this, we need to commit to open discourse and transparency. As a body, Faculty Senate can create a space for collaboration and free exchange of ideas that will strengthen our university. If chosen as chair-elect, I would work to preserve the values of Faculty Senate and to strengthen shared governance structures at WVU. I'm committed to the principles of academic freedom to ensure that faculty can engage fully. And I believe that strong shared governance is the key to the long-term success of our university. So with that, I look forward to continuing to serve alongside you as a faculty senator or if elected as chair-elect. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Tom?
Thanks. With a last name of Z, I'm usually at the end of the line, but I feel a particular sense of urgency to get us out of here at this point. So good afternoon. My name is Tom Zenny. I'm a teaching associate professor in the John Chambers College in the management department. I have a MBA and a PhD in industrial and organizational psychology from the University of Oklahoma. And some of you may have seen me around this building for some time at this point. I'm excited to be finishing up my time in this particular room and be finishing up my JD here in just under a month at this point. So I'm excited about that. And on top of my academic career, I entered academia with 10 years of experience in people management, corporate America, particularly in human resource management. So that's a little bit about my background. I joined WVU, the faculty here in 2016. I joined the Faculty Senate in 2021, and in 2022, I started serving on the Faculty Welfare Committee within the Faculty Senate. Going back to my former HR world and my former life, I championed several successful change initiatives during that time. In academics, I teach and research in the areas of organizational change and change leadership. One of the biggest challenges and the place where many organizations seem to get stuck is figuring out how to balance multiple stakeholders that all have competing interests. I think we're fortunate here at WVU because our system of shared governance allows us to do that. And shared governance and my belief in shared governance is the reason that I joined the Senate and the reason I accepted my colleague's nomination for the Senate chair-elect position. To me, shared governance is negotiating the competing interests between faculty and the administration while working towards a shared common goal, and that's our student success. But there are many paths to that same goal. We must use this venue through the Senate to further those goals. Excuse me, I'm sorry. We know that the higher education landscape is changing. President Gee reminds us of that frequently. And with those changes come the hardships that we're discussing here today. Provost Reed, Vice President Alsop has shared their thoughts on those both today and in last week's town hall meeting. And additionally, we've all seen the changes in higher education within our classrooms, within our students, and we're even now starting to feel the pains associated with the repercussions of the pandemic and the things that occurred help get us through that. At the end of the day, though, we all want the same things: the success of our students, the success of the university, and the success of our state. But as a faculty, we can't take a passive approach in the days to come. Last year, we witnessed the power of our collective voice during the Faculty Assembly's objections to the P&T proposals. But as Scott recently reminded us, we also witnessed apathy, disengagement, and withdrawal, as evidenced by our low participation response rates from the Assembly. So it's not enough for us as a faculty to tell the administration that we don't like their solutions. Rather, we must all work together to leverage our talents, to solve problems creatively and find pathways that are amenable to both faculty and administrators. That's the opportunity that we have before us. My vision for the Faculty Senate and why I accepted this nomination is because change is here, and we cannot sit idly by, and if we do, our interests won't be served. I believe it's critical for us within the Senate to find ways to energize our faculty colleagues and the constituents that we represent. We want to hear their voices, all of their voices. If elected chair, that's my first priority. Next, we must leverage our shared governance process to ensure we work with and not against our university administration and leadership in making the changes that we need to move forward and ensure that WVU remains a top-notch R1 research institution despite these changes in our operating environment. Finally, my goal is to safeguard our faculty interests while we work together to make WVU an even greater institution. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate your votes. Thanks. Scott.
Thank you, Tom. So we appreciate all of the candidates' willingness to serve in the chair-elect role, and we appreciate their service to date in the Faculty Senate. The Qualtrics ballot will be distributed after today's meeting by email. The ballot will remain open for 7 days, so it will close at close of business next Monday, April 17th. And we will announce the results after the close of the ballot. Is there any new business for today? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon.